And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League, now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
I understand in a situation like that, when it comes to the 3s and 4s that you're playing with that aren't going to be on the squad and not going to make the team, give your quarterback a chance. Okay, you know what? You know they can't hold up that long. Let's play quick game. Let's play quick game just to get Shedeur in the goddamn rhythm. But no, you come out calling regular offensive plays.
When they're at practice, Shedeur Sanders is not their priority. When he is at practice, he was staying hours beforehand, leaving hours later.
Last night, what unfolded in Cleveland was not simply football. It was theater. Shedeur Sanders was sent into the game under conditions that looked less like opportunity and more like a trap. This wasn't about development or even evaluation. From the very first snap, you could sense it. The stage had been set for him to stumble. The Brown staff, led by Kevin Stefanski, seemed intent on silencing the hype, on forcing the rookie's rise to grind to a halt before it truly began. But here's the twist. What was meant to contain him may have only amplified his story. Instead of fading, the moment ignited something bigger. Analysts, journalists, and insiders are now circling this narrative like hawks, calling it for what it appears to be, a calculated attempt to orchestrate failure. And instead of burying Sanders, it has sparked a deeper scrutiny, one that doesn't just question the rookie's performance, but the motives of the very franchise that drafted him. The preseason is supposed to be about preparation. For Sanders, it may have turned into something else entirely, a fight against an entire system determined to keep him in check. And now, the Browns aren't just battling opponents on the field. They're facing a storm of voices off it demanding answers.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders. And I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail.
From the moment Shedeur Sanders stepped onto the preseason stage, some voices in the media were already sounding the alarm. None louder than Stephen A. Smith. Long before the lights came on, Smith insisted that this wasn't just a game plan. It was a trap. He warned his audience that the Browns' preseason blueprint wasn't built to evaluate talent, but to orchestrate failure. In his words, putting Sanders in as the starter for that opening game wasn't a reward. It was a setup, a calculated move to watch him stumble, to reaffirm the doubts that critics had been clinging to since draft night. To Smith, this wasn't about competition. It was about optics. Sanders, the so-called fifth-round gamble, was being forced into a box that would justify every skeptical headline written about him. And while some dismissed Smith's take as overreaction, the weeks that followed seemed to prove him right. The structure, the play calling, the lack of support, it all felt designed to feed the narrative that Sanders wasn't ready. And then came Garrett, a voice close to the Cleveland pulse, who doubled down on that sentiment. Bush made it clear, no matter how much Sanders prepared, no matter how much effort he poured into practice or study, he was never more than an afterthought in Kevin Stefanski's plan. Sanders wasn't being developed. He was being positioned. Positioned not for growth, but for failure. It's a damning accusation, and one that refuses to fade. Instead, it's becoming louder, sharper, and harder to ignore.
When they're at practice, Shedeur Sanders is not their priority. When he is at practice, he was staying hours beforehand, leaving hours later.
Kevin Stefanski didn't flinch. When the questions came, sharp and pressing, he stood firm. To him, Shedeur Sanders' struggles were not a product of circumstance, not a byproduct of poor preparation, but a reflection of the player himself. Stefanski's stance was unwavering. The system was working, the team was performing, and if Sanders faltered, the blame rested squarely on his shoulders. But the optics told another story. Reporters pointed out the obvious. Sanders had spent the week practicing with third and fourth string units. He hadn't been given the luxury of building chemistry with the starters, hadn't been afforded the rhythm or timing that comes from working with the players he was suddenly asked to command on game day. When pressed on whether this lack of first-team reps had set Sanders up for failure, Stefanski brushed it off. No acknowledgement, no concession, just a flat insistence that his method was about developing rookies. And here lies the controversy. What does development mean in this context? Is it really development to withhold opportunities, to deny a young quarterback the chance to learn alongside the very players he'd be expected to lead? Or is it something else entirely? An experiment designed to reinforce a narrative rather than nurture a talent? The moment raised a deeper question. Was Stefanski building Sanders up or quietly ensuring the rookie never had a fair shot to succeed?
I think with all of our players, Mary Kay, there's things that we can do better, and there's some good moments out there, but that's what our job as coaches, to develop our guys.
When Skip Bayless weighed in, he didn't mince words. To him, what the Browns were doing with Shedeur Sanders wasn't just questionable, it was reckless. Bayless slammed the organization, calling it the worst possible approach for handling a young quarterback with such promise. In his eyes, this wasn't merely a coaching miscalculation or a single poor decision in the preseason. No, this was part of something much bigger, a troubling pattern of neglect and mishandling that had defined Sanders' early days in Cleveland. Bayless pointed to the obvious signs: the lack of first-team reps, the forced situations, the dismissal of legitimate concerns. He argued that Sanders hadn't been given the tools to succeed, nor the environment to grow. Instead, he had been thrust into the spotlight with expectations sky high and support nearly non-existent. For a rookie quarterback, that isn't just unfair, it's setting the stage for failure. And Bayless didn't stop there. He reminded viewers that pressure is not just about the game. It's about the narrative swirling around a young player, the doubts reinforced every time he struggles, and the weight of criticism that only grows heavier when the franchise seems unwilling to protect him. The Browns, he argued, weren't insulating Sanders from that storm. They were feeding it. In Bayless' assessment, this wasn't development. It was demolition, a process not of building up, but of tearing down. And it raised the chilling possibility that what was happening in Cleveland wasn't just about the present. It was about shaping a future in which Shedeur Sanders never had a fair chance to begin with.
I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League, now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
Then came Ocho Cinco, his words sharp and unflinching. He cut straight to the heart of the matter. This wasn't about Shedeur Sanders' ability. It was about the environment he was forced into. By placing Sanders in a lineup filled with offensive players who had little chance of even making the final roster, Kevin Stefanski had, in Ocho's eyes, stacked the deck against him. The rookie quarterback wasn't being tested under fair conditions. He was being set up to stumble. Ocho drove the point home with a bold comparison. Even Tom Brady, in those same circumstances, would have struggled. If one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time couldn't have succeeded with that level of support, how could anyone expect a rookie to thrive? The message was clear. This wasn't about talent. This was about circumstance. And the blame, he argued, fell squarely on the shoulders of the coaching staff. Analysts echoed his sentiment, pointing out that Sanders was never given a fair opportunity to showcase what he could truly do. Instead, the setup created an inevitable narrative. Critics would seize the struggles, twist them, and brand Sanders as a failure. Dismiss him as nothing more than a fifth-string quarterback. But Ocho warned of the deeper danger. The real issue wouldn't be confronted. Few would point fingers at those responsible for crafting the situation. Few would admit this was orchestrated. Instead, the narrative machine would turn against Sanders, making him the scapegoat. And in Ocho's words, that was the tragedy. Not that Sanders faltered, but that some were more invested in tearing him down than in acknowledging the truth behind his performance. A truth that, for now, remains buried beneath layers of criticism and denial.
You just beat the guy. And that's okay. You get paid, he gets paid. Sometimes Ocho just gonna win because Ocho was just the better player. Sometimes the defensive back is gonna win. He wins some, you win more than you lose.
And here lies the part of the story that separates Shedeur Sanders from so many others. Despite the controversy swirling around him, despite analysts and fans pointing fingers at Kevin Stefanski and the Browns coaching staff, Sanders himself refused to add fuel to the fire. Not a single word of criticism passed his lips. No bitterness, no excuses. Instead, he chose a different path, one defined by accountability. In the aftermath of a game that many believed was engineered for his failure, Sanders stood in front of the cameras and did what veterans twice his age sometimes struggle to do. He took full responsibility. He admitted there were areas he needed to clean up. He acknowledged that his eyes should have been sharper, that his decisions could have been quicker, that the offense could have flowed smoother under his command. And then he shouldered it all. The missed reads, the pressure, even the sacks. Every single one, he said, was on him. That's not the voice of a rookie searching for excuses. That's the voice of a young quarterback who understands that the NFL doesn't wait for sympathy. Sanders embraced the struggle, not as a setback to dwell on, but as a lesson to grow from. His words carried maturity, self-awareness, and a quiet determination that left no doubt about his mindset. It was a glimpse into the character of Shedeur Sanders, the willingness to own the bad, to learn from it, and to turn it into fuel. A response that proved, regardless of the circumstances stacked against him, he's already thinking and responding like a professional.
No, I gotta watch the film, honestly. I can't say what it was. It's definitely a different place where I could got my eyes in better spots and got to the progressions quicker and regardless to anything, so all those sacks, they definitely on me.
But here's the pressing question. How long can Shedeur Sanders continue to shoulder all the blame? How long can one young man, still finding his footing in the league, be expected to absorb the weight of systemic failures and organizational bias without breaking? At what point does accountability shift from the individual to the institution? Because make no mistake, this is no longer just about a rookie quarterback missing reads or holding the ball too long. This is about fairness. This is about opportunity. This is about whether or not the NFL itself is willing to confront the uncomfortable reality that some players are never truly given a fair chance. For Sanders, the signs are all too clear. Practice reps denied, playbooks withheld, environments stacked against him. What was once viewed as a stumble now appears to be something far more calculated. A setup, a narrative constructed to keep him in check. Yes, Sanders survived the opening storm. He carried himself with composure, owned his mistakes, and spoke with the poise of a seasoned veteran. But even as he grows from these experiences, the system around him refuses to evolve. And that's the crux of the issue. His journey is no longer just his own. It is symbolic of countless young athletes who have been mishandled, misrepresented, and misunderstood. Players who are judged not solely on their talent, but on whether or not they fit a predetermined mold, a narrative shaped by coaches, executives, and media voices eager to decide who rises and who falls. The Browns' treatment of Sanders has become a case study in systemic bias within professional football. Throwing him into situations where failure was the only likely outcome isn't development. It's sabotage. And while Sanders' resilience shines through, the real story here is the system that continues to pull players like him down instead of lifting them up. This conversation is bigger than Cleveland. It's bigger than Shedeur Sanders. It's about dismantling the barriers that prevent athletes from being judged on merit alone. About ensuring that every player, no matter their draft slot, their background, or the narrative placed on them, has the chance to truly compete. So, the question remains, when will the system change? When will players like Shedeur Sanders finally be given the chance to thrive, free from agendas and prejudice? We want to hear from you. Do you believe Sanders is being treated fairly? Or is this proof of a deeper issue at play in the NFL? How long should athletes be expected to take responsibility for circumstances stacked against them? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, because this isn't just about one quarterback. It's about the future of fairness in football.